his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Moniz, for being here. And before I start my question, I would just like to extend my heartfelt prayers to the people in Brussels, Belgium this morning for the horrific terrorist attacks that's taken against our friends and allies. And remind people that it's not just the people of Belgium that were attacked, but many Americans who serve at NATO live in that area. And terrorism is a real-time threat, not only overseas, but here in the United States, as we have recently learned. As part of my responsibility in Congress, I serve as the chairman of the Oversight Subcommittee on this honorable committee. I also sit on the Homeland Security Committee. And back in May, we traveled through the Middle East and even into Europe, and I went to Brussels as part of a counterterrorism task force. And one of the scenarios that we have to look at, and one of the things that frightens me much more than in other attacks that we have seen, is the potential of a dirty bomb. Release of radiation on our citizens, not necessarily through a traditional nuclear bomb, but just a dirty bomb that releases radioactive material. And I want to follow up a little bit on what the chairman had asked. Is in the last Congress, the committee staff requested a briefing on low-dose radiation from your department regarding legislation dealing with low-dose radiation. And it's important, as we develop legislation, to understand the effects of and the risks of low-dose radiation, either through a dirty bomb. How do we evacuate? How do we protect the people, as well as physicians who deal with this type of radiation? And as was mentioned earlier, and as I was made aware, that subsequent to that briefing, where technical questions were answered, this employee was fired from your department. And again, this briefing was organized through your Congressional Affairs Office, and I'm gravely concerned that how can Congress do our job if we don't have timely and effective technical information, which we rely on from agencies under the executive branch, that we can effectively do our job, not only from an oversight and investigatory authority that we have through the Constitution, but also good legislation that represents the people, that we can effectively respond to these type of threats that we face, or just the daily operation of using radiological material. What have you done in light of this to ensure that your employees are not intimidated from within to sharing truth and the information that Congress needs to be able to do our job that the American people expect us to do for them?
Thank you. If I may comment on Brussels first,
Please.
because of course we all align with your initial statement, but I just would note that our Deputy Secretary was actually in Brussels on Friday discussing precisely these issues, offered to our Belgian colleagues an opportunity to come to our laboratories to see some of the technologies that could be used to prevent these things.
Thank you for that.
Which they said immediately yes, and just days before this terrible event. And I would also mention that March 31st and April 1st, so end of next week, I guess, we will host the Nuclear Security Summit here in Washington, which will address many of these issues. With regard to the low-dose radiation issue, first of all, I am trying my best to make sure that there's a culture of understanding that we want to have clear statements of what are technical facts. As I said, and in this case, we moved that employee, is well known, is at work at the Department of Energy.
So she has been rehired.
Correct.
After being fired.
That's correct. So,
okay. So at least there's some recognition
action
that
was taken. Correct.
Okay.
If I might add on the substance, just to conclude on the low-dose radiation, I asked my Secretary of Energy Advisory Board to look at that. They came back and said, important issue. We're not the right group to look at this. We then charged the BER Advisory Committee to look at this. They will come back with a report this fall on what a restructured, effective program may look like. The reality is, as we all know, it's been a frustrating subject in terms of being unable to reach the conclusions that we would like to operationalize what is a hugely important and expensive issue for us, how one treats low-dose radiation. So we are actively looking at that. The fall we'll have a report back. And I might add, the cancer, this is a little bit of a stretch, but we could discuss it later. The cancer initiative may provide, through big data analytics, one of the most effective ways of addressing the low-dose issue.
And thank you for what you're doing. And again, my concern goes back to there may be a nuclear engineer on this committee. I am not one. And so therefore, I rely heavily upon those that you employ to ensure that we do our job that the American people expect us to do. And things such as protecting against a dirty bomb, I can't think of anything that would be more high priority than us being proactive in that and from a legislative standpoint. And I hope that you agree that working between the branches of government is extremely important, that we have the access to the information, and when we request information, that we receive honest, true information that's comprehensive and in a timely manner to our job. Do you agree that,
Yes.
that we must do that? All right, thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Loudermilk. The gentleman